Hungary bans LGBTQ plus content for under 18s. Prime Minister Viktor Orban of the Fidesz party proposed a law prohibiting sharing content with minors that is deemed to promote homosexuality and gender change. Fidesz has described the legislation as an effort to prevent pedophilia. Over 5,000 people protested outside the Hungarian parliament building in Budapest because, of course, they did. This is horrible. In an attempt to stop the legislation from passing. The legislation has also been condemned by people at numerous human rights groups and like involved in human rights interests, such as people at Human Rights Watch, the Council of Europe, and Hungary's branch of Amnesty International. So the opposition has been intense. You can see this in the reporting. That, like, people are really angry about this. There were people comparing it to some of Russia's anti-queer legislation. But despite the intense opposition, the law passed with a vote of 157 to 1. Now, things aren't quite as dire as they seem. That is partly due to every opposition party except for one independent party boycotting the voting session in protest, but that is still 157 votes in favor, which is quite scary.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the reporting, they've noted that I think Orban's party has been in power for about the last 10 years, and they have a majority, so they can basically do whatever they want, if I'm understanding correctly. It's a really scary situation for people in Hungary. This is only Orban's latest attack against trans people as well. A short while ago, he banned people from changing their gender marker on official documents, which passed with a vote of 133 to 57. And in the process, he rejected a backlog of applications going back 3 years. So, like, he almost, like, retroactively, he effectively banned this from happening 3 years before the legislation even passed, which is really messed up, and it's had a really horrible impact on trans people in Hungary. Tina Kolos Orban, the vice president of advocacy group Trans Vanilla Transgender Association, said that, quote, "People who haven't had suicidal thoughts for decades are now having them. People are in panic. People want to escape from Hungary to somewhere else where they can get their gender recognized," end quote. So this is really scary for trans people in Hungary are going through similar things to trans people in the UK, and it's also absolutely terrifying for trans youth. That they won't have resources. It's banned for them to have resources. They are not going to understand why they feel differently from other people, or they have to try and figure things out just relying on what they can find online. They're not going to have support in school. They're going to grow up in an environment where they'll be able to tell there's disapproval.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the absence of recognition and support. And then when they do grow up, when they do understand, when they try to be themselves, then they have all these other laws preventing them from legal recognition, and preventing them from living their lives the way they want to. I remember when I was early in my transition, I couldn't change my gender marker because at the time the laws required sexual reassignment surgery for that, and I didn't want that, and I also could not afford that, and it honestly, it did make me feel pretty suicidal, that lack of recognition. It made me feel like life wasn't worth living, and so my heart goes out to queer people in Hungary, and especially queer youth who are going through that.
Yeah,
I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well, of course, there's quick parallel to draw between what's happened and the UK Section 28 that was passed in 1988 by Margaret Thatcher. And that, again, prohibited the promotion of homosexuality. And like again, the arguments there was it's about protecting children from paedophiles, and that Margaret Thatcher was very on the nose about this, talking about how they needed to protect the children from the deviants, how they weren't going to let them become corrupted by sinful ways. And the scary thing about it is, in spite of the fact that it was repealed first in Scotland in 2000 and then in the England and Wales in 2003, so it was in place for 15 years. In spite of that fact, the damage it had is long lasting. It's not just the case of repeal it, it's gone, it's done with now. We are still seeing it. People are still arguing on the basis that it was promoted. I covered in 2019 what happened in Birmingham and everything there, and that whole situation was just wrapped up in the rhetoric of Section 28 and parental hostility, etc. So again, it doesn't just. This is not something that can just be undone by changing the law, which is going to take time anyway. But it's just, yeah, it really is tragic to see what's happening. Tragic to know how this is going to hurt the queer community in Hungary. And my heart just reaches out to them because, I remember in my school just how fucking ignorant the teachers were because, like a decade later they had still no fucking idea on what they were teaching because very often, like after a law like this is repealed, there's that period where things are just left to sit. I remember we had separate sex and relationship and citizen classes. And like I just turned 16. I'd been with my boyfriend. People knew I'd been with my boyfriend. And like I had a couple of the girls from the other class run up to me and tell me that what I'd done was illegal. That it was age of consent was 16 for heterosexual couples, and it was still I think 18 for same gender couples, on the basis of that's how the law was at one point, but it wasn't anymore. It hadn't been that way for a decade. But again, even after the Section 28 was repealed, like there was an unwillingness to touch it because it had been politicized, and and it led to a lot of terrible shit down the line. I just hope that things can get sorted relatively quickly. But again, you mentioned that they've been in power for 10 years. So I don't know what the political situation in Hungary is like.
They're going to have an election next year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've seen how this sort of thing goes. I don't think that they're going to be voted out, but I hope that they can be voted out. Like the fact that they're doing this pretty much right before an election shows they're confident that they will be allowed to continue with this. Hopefully.
It was 21 originally. I believe they might have actually discussed bringing it down to 18. I don't know if they actually brought it down to 18. But anyway, they said that, yes, this is responding to Herbie in the chat. Like I was told that what I did was illegal when it wasn't. And I knew more than the teacher. So that should never be a case.
It's not hard depending on what the subject is. I guess one other thing to point out that I didn't realize at first, or when I was writing the notes, is they keep describing it as promoting homosexuality and promoting gender shit, and you keep hearing this language where simply acknowledging that different people exist is promoting, and it's particularly aggressive when it comes to trans people, where if you allow children to identify with any kind of gender or explore their gender in any way other than being cis, then that's considered transing them. Like literally anything other than forcing them to be cis is considered transing them, and it's just this double standard in how queer people are viewed, where if you don't aggressively stamp it out at every turn, then that's the same thing as promoting it.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately a narrative, I think, that it's been going for so long that we're just kind of numb to it and we just kind of accept it. And it's very important, I think, to draw that distinction between like forcing someone to do, like, forcing someone to be trans is if you go up to someone as like, okay, you have this name now, these pronouns, you have to wear these clothes. That's not what's going on here. Like, promoting homosexuality is like saying if you're not gay, you should be gay because it's really great. That's not what's going on here. It's just acknowledgement, and we cannot keep letting those things be conflated.
It's like the whole being pro-choice is being pro-abortion. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Just for clarification.
Okay, I wish it was pro-abortion. I love abortions. Abortions are great.
Atheist, mincemeat. Anyway, just a clarification. I knew the age of consent for gay couples was set at 21 by the Wolfenden Act in 1967. I wasn't sure if it had been lowered. It had been lowered, actually on the year of my birth, 1994, to 18. So yes, they thought that you had to be 18 to give consent. That wasn't the case. It was lowered down to 16, thereby equalizing it in 2000. This happened.
We should know this because we mentioned that in a video at some point.
I know. I go over it all the time. The thing is, I always sometimes forget. It's just that middle bit, the 18 lowering. I don't remember if it actually went ahead or if it was just suggested and then they decided just to go for 16 and equalize it. That's why I always get confused with. I think there's another law that had a similar thing that they just did like forward something and then just jump over it. So yes, and I was 16 at the time. I turned 16, so this is 2010. Yes, it's 2010. This would be 2010. And they came up to me and told me that it was illegal. It's like, that hasn't been the law for 10 years. So, yeah. So again, the damage is going to be long-lasting. Okay. Oh, we have.
I mean, like, even the damage of fucking proposing it is going to be a long lasting.
Yeah, because it shows what society is willing to entertain. It's like the fact that these anti-trans bills that result in children being like sexually assaulted. Yeah, a lot of them have been killed at like the Senate level, but the fact that they made through the House level, that is terrifying enough. You know, that is going to have a deep psychological impact on trans people in that area.